Ah, I'm so tired. In the middle of the night, I walk home with an exhausted body. I stayed at work very late because of job responsibilities. Feeling sorry for getting home late to my husband Keith and my father-in-law George, I start jogging toward the house. Suddenly, I stop in front of my house. The garage door is open. Before I can even think why, the car parked in the garage suddenly speeds out. Eek! I let out a small scream and shrink back as the car comes to a sudden stop right in front of me. Behind the wheel was my father-in-law, George. As soon as he noticed me, he opened the passenger door from the inside.
Haley, get in the car.
What? Wait a second. What's going on at this hour?
Don't make a fuss. I'll explain later. Just get in the car now.
Under the intense pressure, I quickly opened the passenger door and got into the car. Eek! Before I can lock my seatbelt, George speeds off, and I let out another small scream. As the car takes off, I hear a shout from behind. Turning around, I see Keith yelling incoherently. He's chasing after our rapidly accelerating car. What is this? What's happening? Keith is chasing us with a furious look on his face, while George grips the wheel with a stern expression. Stuck between the two of them, I can only grimace in fear. My name is Haley Smith. I work as a tutor at a tutoring center near the station and live with my husband Keith. We both work at the same place, but Keith is a full-time employee while I work part-time. I handle most of the housework, though Keith helps out if I ask. If I ask, that is. Keith has a handsome face. When we're just going about our day, he often looks at me with droopy eyes and a slight smile. When he watches me wash the dishes, smiling a little, I can't help but laugh. What? What are you looking at?
Your hairstyle. The way you tie it back. I think it's really beautiful.
I almost dropped a dish I'm rinsing off. Keith is always like this. He compliments me on things I don't even think about, little details I overlook. Even though it's obviously just flattery, it still makes me happy. He's kind. Maybe too kind. Since we work together at the same tutoring center, Keith is technically my boss. If my students' grades improve, it reflects positively on my evaluation. Otherwise, I'm expected to seek appropriate measures. Besides teaching, there are reports to write and lesson plans to prepare. Even when I make mistakes, Keith never gets angry. He always helps and guides me patiently. To others, he might seem like the perfect, kind husband. I think so too. But there's a strange discomfort in my heart that I can't ignore. Is it awful of me not to fully trust such a kind husband? Keith and I met at our current workplace. I don't remember feeling anything special when we first met. We probably got married because we had a lot in common. That was a long time ago. My parents died in a car accident. It happened when I was in 5th grade, on our way to a spa resort hotel. I remember looking out the car window at the unfamiliar countryside scenery.
Watch out! Damn it!
Suddenly, my father let out a painful scream, and my mother grabbed me tightly. A car, its driver having an epileptic seizure, collided with ours, making the news. My father and mother died. I only had minor fractures in my arms and legs. Relatives and friends who visited me all said I was miraculously lucky or fortunate to be safe. Staring at my bandaged limbs, I asked myself, is this a miracle? Is this being fortunate? My mother's relative, with tears in her eyes, said,
Haley, your mom died holding you protectively. You need to live for her sake.
This is a lie. It's all a dream. None of this is real.
Yes, I know. You're confused now, but it's going to be all right. Everything will be okay.
I pressed my bandaged hand against the hospital bed rail, feeling the pain to confirm it was real. It wasn't fake. It was genuine pain. I couldn't stop crying. The fact that my parents were gone, and the fact that I was still alive made me sad. Despite this, my kind relatives supported me as I grew up. I think I received a lot of love. I have to become a proper adult. I always resolved in my heart so. After that, I threw myself into my work. I met Keith at the same workplace, and gradually, his dedication to work caught my eye. His way of interacting with students, his serious and sincere attitude. He was kind to everyone and had good looks, so I thought he was out of my league and not a potential romantic partner. Keith asked me out on our first date. Then the second and the third dates were also initiated by him. I was the one who asked to start dating. By the end of our third date, I couldn't hold back my feelings for him. When I asked him to date me, Keith talked about his past with a slightly clouded expression.
I lost my mom and live with my elderly father. Also, I recently got divorced.
I see.
I'm trying to bury myself in work to forget about the divorce. Knowing I'm divorced might make you reconsider dating me.
I don't mind. Because I admire your dedication to your work.
Keith looked a little surprised, but then smiled gently. The longer we dated, the more we were drawn to each other. As I was approaching 40, Keith proposed to me. In a dimly lit restaurant on a high floor overlooking the beautiful night sea. It was like a setting made for a proposal, and he said seriously,
Will you marry me?
At that moment, I felt like I was the protagonist in a drama. Losing my parents, feeling hopeless, and thinking this world was fake. It finally felt like the scenery in front of my eyes became real. Keith told me about his family, which he hadn't talked much about before. His mother had already passed away. He lived with his elderly father, George. After we got married, he suggested that we live with George since he was worried about him, and I agreed without hesitation. Both George and Keith were kind, and I was living a satisfying life. We decided not to have children. Having experienced the pain and sadness of losing parents, Keith and I were both afraid of becoming parents ourselves. I've come to terms with this way of living. A few years after we got married, Keith was very kind. He accepted almost all of my suggestions and forgave my household mistakes with a smile. He would smile, turn his back on me, and looked somewhere far away. His kindness, which I had considered a virtue, gradually changed within me. I began to feel that his behavior was no different from indifference. Moreover, Keith was not a person who talked much about himself. Being a tutor is fulfilling but demanding. His return times were irregular, and he often spent weekends alone in his study. He'd suddenly invite me shopping or on a date, worry about George's condition, and his actions had no pattern. I once heard somewhere that people who cheat have plenty of time. I don't remember where I heard it, but Keith's ever-composed demeanor always made me tilt my head in confusion. Keith is naturally handsome, and I knew he was popular. But cheating was unforgivable. Wanting to trust him, I decided to hire a private investigator. They said the investigation would take a week. The investigation was surprisingly expensive, but if it proved Keith's innocence, I could fully accept that he was truly kind. When I returned home from the investigator's office, I found George sitting in a chair, clutching his chest. "George." I rushed over, rubbed his back, and handed him his medicine and some water. George had a heart condition and was prescribed several medications. Due to his age, he also took medications for managing blood pressure and cholesterol. I wasn't told the details, but it seemed more like the medications were for controlling the disease's progression rather than curing it.
Thank you. I should feel better soon.
George generally lived a life similar to a healthy person, but sudden attacks were troublesome. They included chest pains, irregular breathing, muscle spasms, and more. Usually, resting in bed would calm them, but in severe cases, they could become disastrous. Recently, George's health had worsened. I stayed close to him and watched his condition. I wanted to consult with Keith, but even when I contacted him late at night, his only response was always, "I'm busy, sorry." Since we worked at the same place, I thought I knew how busy Keith was. Even though he was the one who suggested taking care of George, it was a bit cruel of him. I pout as I organized George's numerous medications into a case. Something feels off. A week later, I found myself in the cramped office of the detective agency. Sitting on a worn-out sofa, I listened to the investigator's report. The conclusion was that Keith was guilty. They told me he was having an affair with a woman named Teresa Wright. Teresa Wright. I've never heard that name before. Staring at the unknown woman's name and the candid photo of her profile, I felt my mood darken. Divorce, huh? I muttered as if it were someone else's problem. Losing my parents and getting used to loneliness, the fleeting happiness I grasped felt like a joke. I laughed softly. At home, I put the documents from the detective agency in an unused drawer of the dresser. I set the kettle on the stove, preparing my favorite herbal tea. As I poured hot water into the glass pot, the sweet, honey-like aroma of linden filled the room.
What a nice smell, Haley.
George emerged from the room, slightly holding his leg, and smiled. I immediately supported him and helped him to the sofa in the living room. When I handed him the TV remote, he quietly shook his head. So I made 2 cups of freshly brewed herbal tea and knelt on the floor.
It's delicious. I feel like I'll sleep well.
How are you feeling, George?
There are good days and bad days. But what about you, Haley? Are you not exhausted from taking care of me? Well, it's difficult to say in front of me.
George added with a laugh. His smile was very similar to Keith's when I first met him. Maybe that's why. Just like I would with Keith, I found myself opening up to George. I told him about hiring a detective to investigate Keith, about my feelings of betrayal, that I planned to confront Keith with the facts and consider divorce depending on his reaction, and that I had the papers ready. When I noticed George listening intently, I immediately regretted it. This was a problem between my husband and me, and burdening George, who was suffering from health issues, was wrong.
Thank you for telling me.
I tilted my head, not understanding the meaning behind his thanks. Feeling suddenly awkward, I took my tea and went to the kitchen. When I glanced back, George was staring quietly into space with a troubled expression. For a while, I hesitated to confront Keith about the affair. A divorce would disrupt our current life. I was afraid of the sudden change in life, just like the one caused by the car accident. I know from experience that I hate change. I'm convinced that having today be the same as yesterday and tomorrow be the same as today is happiness. Even if that means living a life connected by fake love. One day, due to taking care of George, I hadn't been able to fully attend to my work, and a problem arose with one of the students at the tutoring center I oversee. A parent complained that their child's grades had dropped with the usual study methods, and I had to come up with a clear plan to address it. Long overtime hours were expected. I asked Keith to leave work early and take care of George. Late at night, exhausted, I walked home. It took a long time, but I thought I had finally created a new study schedule. Feeling sorry for coming home late, I jogged towards the house. I stopped in front of the house. The garage door was open. Before I could wonder why, the car in the garage suddenly sped out. Eek! I let out a small scream and shrank back as the car screeched to a halt right in front of me.
Haley, get in the car.
What? Wait a minute. What's going on at this hour?
Don't make a fuss. I'll explain later. Just get in now.
Pressed by the urgency, I quickly opened the passenger door and got in the car. Eek! Before I could lock my seatbelt, the car sped off, and I let out another small scream. As the car took off, I heard a shout from behind. Turning around, I saw Keith yelling incoherently. He seemed to be chasing the speeding car, desperately trying to catch up with us until we turned a corner and he disappeared from view. At that volume, his voice must have echoed throughout the neighborhood. I sank deeply into the seat and sighed. It was the first time I'd seen Keith, always so calm and composed, so frantic. George, in the driver's seat, said nothing. It was clearly something serious. I didn't know what had happened, but I decided to wait for George to talk. For a while, we just drove along the road. It didn't seem like we had a destination, just driving aimlessly, until finally we stopped at a corner store with a large parking lot. George rested his forehead on the steering wheel and sighed deeply. "George, what happened?" Keith seemed really angry.
Sorry for the confusion. Where should I start?
George tapped his forehead against the steering wheel several times, organizing his thoughts. "I'll get us some drinks." I took the hint and bought some drinks from the corner store, handing one to George.
Thank you, Haley. This is going to be a long story. Will you listen?
With that preface, my father-in-law began his tale.
Yes, let's see. I should start by talking about my wife, Keith's mother, Angela.
I was surprised to learn that the late mother-in-law was involved in this commotion, and I tilted my head. Keith's mother, Angela, was apparently very prone to falling in love. When she was young, she reportedly dated multiple men at the same time.
You'd think I should have divorced someone like that, wouldn't you, Haley? But we had a young Keith at the time. I couldn't bring myself to make that decision.
I could understand a little why I couldn't immediately demand a divorce after discovering Keith's affair. It was the fear of losing family. Marriage isn't just a bond with your partner. I might lose the friends of George who had been so kind to me, and George himself. Thinking about that, I couldn't move forward.
Angela wasn't an irresponsible woman, though. That might have been her only virtue.
George explained that Angela devoted time to all the men she was seeing, facing them sincerely. She didn't dump household chores or childcare on George. Together, they fulfilled their responsibilities as parents and spouses, and she used her free time, which other women might spend on hobbies, to be with other men. She also never revealed this fact to Keith, considering his development. George looked at the brightly lit corner store with a slight smile.
Angela used to say it was an honest and upright multiple relationship. It was almost a catchphrase of hers.
George accepted Angela's lifestyle. He had no choice. It wasn't pleasant, but he realized that pretending not to see anything had almost no impact. But the family time came to a very quick end. Angela was diagnosed with a brain tumor at a young age and was told she didn't have long to live. Even then, she remained nonchalant.
Before she got seriously ill, she told each of her lovers about her condition and said goodbye. And in the end,
George took his hands off the steering wheel and looked at his palms. In the end, she passed away in the hospital, holding George's hand.
But I couldn't just be depressed. For Angela's sake, I worked hard to raise Keith properly.
However, bad signs started to show when Keith was in high school. Keith had grown into a womanizer. In the worst possible way, he had inherited Angela's tendency to fall in love quickly. He would charm women with his gentlemanly behavior and discard them irresponsibly when he got bored. George tried his best to have sincere conversations with Keith to stop this behavior. But Keith's bad habit never changed, and he ended up getting married. To me.
At first, I was against the marriage. It was obvious, wasn't it? I could see that Haley would end up unhappy. But Keith insisted.
As a condition of marriage, Keith proposed that we live together. It was a very appealing offer for George, who was physically disabled. But most of George's care was left to me. On the surface, Keith was kind, but behind the scenes, he was constantly playing around. Despite being busy with work, he still found time to have affairs. It was almost like a sickness.
I'd quit fooling around and prioritize married life.
At first, Keith apparently said so. George thought he'd wait and see for a while, but in reality, Keith was secretly having a great time. People's true nature doesn't change that easily.
Haley, you shared the detective's findings with me, didn't you? I appreciated that. I thought it was time to give him a real talking to.
That's kind of a strange thing to say.
What? Oh yes. Keith is twisted. I need to face my son properly.
I looked down a bit. It wasn't just Keith who seemed strange. Angela and even George seemed odd to me. Angela proudly having affairs. George, who allowed it with a peculiar kind of love. Honest and upright multiple relationships. I felt a bit sorry for George, who spoke about it somewhat proudly. By the way, why did you suddenly take me outside? Keith seemed really angry.
When you came home, Keith was happily talking to his mistress on the phone. I thought it would be too much for you to witness that.
George, angry, had grabbed Keith's phone and smashed it on the floor. That's why Keith was chasing us. But wait, I already knew from the investigation that Keith was cheating. I don't really care about him talking to another woman on the phone now.
Are you feeling a bit calmer now?
Yes, I am. I see. Maybe George was angry for my sake, but also for himself. Anger towards the late Angela. He might be directing his unresolved anger at Keith. And he probably doesn't even realize it. Being betrayed by someone, justifying it, and now having no one left to hate. The engine started, and the car began to move. When we got home, we'd confront Keith about his affair. George and I agreed. We parked the car in the garage. Keith, silently drinking whiskey in the living room, glared at George and me with resentment. Without a word, I placed the detective's report on the table. A slightly drunk Keith rubbed his eyes and looked over the documents.
Oh, this. Well, it's a former student. It's not an affair or anything.
That's a lame excuse. There are photos and investigation results right there.
It's true. She's been struggling with work, and she said she wanted a quiet place to talk, just the two of us.
Keith made a feeble excuse. For once, he looked genuinely flustered, without his usual composure. I had loved Keith, who worked so hard and treated me with the kindest smile. Looking at him now, it was like watching his facade crumble away. My feelings for Keith rapidly cooled, and his desperate excuses, no matter how valid or not, began to mean nothing to me.
Enough, Keith. Pay Haley the alimony and agree to the divorce.
This is a matter between husband and wife. Stay out of it, Dad.
I have every right to interfere. I'm your father.
Keith was taken aback, then turned his gaze to me and quietly laughed. He must have realized from my cold eyes that I no longer had any love for him. To be honest, I didn't have a strong desire for a divorce. The procedures for a divorce are tedious, with a lot of paperwork and hassles. But if I didn't take a step forward now, I'd remain an unhappy woman forever, living a life pretending not to know about my husband's affair. George lived that way, so I don't completely reject it, but it still feels wrong. I can't claim to know what the ideal marriage looks like, but a relationship where one person feels sad or heartbroken doesn't seem right to me. Keith, let's get a divorce, right now.
Wait, Haley. I get it. I'll change my ways. I won't cheat anymore. I'll only look at you.
I'm not going to look at you anymore. With those final words, Keith fell silent, and the night quietly passed. A year later, Keith surprisingly agreed to the divorce rather easily. He remained as carefree as ever, even sending me casual texts after the divorce, asking how I was, or suggesting we go on a date. I can't tell if he's joking or serious, but I completely ignore him. Today is a beautifully sunny day. The rain is over, and the sky is clear. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, wearing a white dress that might be too youthful for my age. I'm still young. I'm still beautiful. The words Keith often told me might have been fake in hindsight, but my feelings now are undeniably real. My phone buzzed in my bag. When I held it to my ear, I heard a familiar voice.
Haley? It's been a while.
It was George, who unsolicitedly told me about Keith's current situation. Since the divorce, Keith had suddenly become more subdued and had refrained from dating women. He hasn't found a new partner yet and has been diligently taking care of George and participating in matchmaking events.
Everything is moving in a positive direction. Thank you for listening, Haley.
That's my word, thank you. I'm sorry, but I have to go now. Someone is waiting for me. I hung up the phone and looked at myself in the mirror. Since working at the same place as my ex-husband wasn't an option, I found a new job at another tutoring center. I needed a full-time position to support myself, and this whole ordeal made me rethink many things. Maybe I was afraid of love. The fear of suddenly losing someone important. I lost my parents in an accident, and from that day on, my entire life changed. Maybe it's the same with love. Even if you love someone, you will eventually part ways. Even if it's not your fault, you might suddenly be told goodbye. Perhaps during a date, when they say they're going to the bathroom, they could be caught in an unfortunate accident. No matter how long you're together, people always part with their loved ones. No one lives forever. Knowing that pain, suffering, and sadness from a young age, I might have been somewhat cold toward love. I was scared of genuinely falling in love. Maybe Keith sensed those feelings in me. I had no intention of condoning Keith's affair. But if I had truly loved him from the bottom of my heart, if I was desperately trying to catch his attention by eagerly responding to his always gentle yet somewhat indifferent attitude, That's just wishful thinking. I looked at myself in the mirror. Have I changed since a year ago? I lightly touched up my makeup and left the restroom. There were a few families and couples waiting in front of the elevator in the crowded shopping mall. In the waiting area, a tall man smiled at me, and it seemed to light up the space around him. I smiled back at him. Casually, I held his hand. He looked a bit surprised, but he didn't let go. That made me smile even more. Now, I am taking a step forward to find true happiness.
Old hat, where the heck are you? The funeral has already started. What are you doing? Hurry back.
From the phone, the piercing voice of my husband's daughter, Nancy, made me wince. Can you stop yelling? I'm not planning on attending the funeral. Then Nancy screamed through her tears.
Pissed off. Where on earth is there a wife who wouldn't attend her husband's funeral? Everything's a mess here. Just do what you need to do.
For the past 8 years, I have been despised by my husband, stepdaughter, and grandchild. On the day my husband died, I found out about something, so I moved silently on the day of his funeral and disappeared. Calls came from my stepdaughter in tears, but I had no intention of attending the funeral. After all, for these 8 years, I have been continually taken from by them. Now it's my turn. Following this, my counteractions will lead my stepdaughter and grandchild to lose everything. My name is Mia Cantrell. At 60 years old, I worked for a foreign insurance company. I decided to join this company, newly established in the U.S., because I had studied Spanish in college. People around me would say things like, "That's quite adventurous." Since joining, my days were filled with work, from early morning till late at night. Literally no days off. That's how I spent my 20s, without making any lovers, and dedicating myself to work. As I passed 30, I got promoted, became more efficient at my job, and began to have more free time. I thought it might be time to start looking for my own happiness, and registered at a popular dating service at that time. At the dating service, I couldn't find the one right away. As I began to understand the difficulty of finding a lifelong partner, I met someone.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mike Thompson.
The greeting came from a well-built man. His gentle smile gave a friendly impression. This was my future husband, Mike. Mike was 4 years older than me, a salesperson at a small company. He has been married before, but separated from his ex-wife 2 years ago due to incompatibility of their personalities. Though we were in different fields, both being in sales made our conversations lively. We both enjoyed traveling, which led us to start dating with marriage in mind. Mike was always a gentleman on dates, and I was thrilled with my newfound love. After dating Mike for about a year without any issues, and we planned to go on a trip to a resort hotel together on our first relationship anniversary. I was hoping maybe he would propose to me during the trip. Excited, I waited at our meeting place. Finally, Mike's car pulled up. As I was about to greet him with a smile, I froze. From the back seat of the car, 2 unfamiliar people emerged. One was a flashy dressed woman around 60 years old. The other was a girl about 10, holding a comic book. Well, Mike, who are these people? Mike turned back to the two.
This my family. My mom and my daughter. Come on, say hello.
Then his mother looked me up and down and said,
I'm Joyce, Mike's mom. You're Mike's girlfriend. You have a plain face. You have small eyes, don't you? All our family have big eyes and well-defined face.
Bluntly put by Joyce, I was more disturbed by the presence of the girl. Daughter. Did he say daughter? I hadn't heard a word about a child. Prompted by Mike, the girl looked up from her comic book to greet.
I'm Nancy.
And with that, she dove back into the book. Mike, well, what's going on? I don't understand any of this. Confused, I spoke to Mike, who nonchalantly explained.
When I said I was going on a trip, they both wanted to come along too. It's fine, right? Let's all enjoy it.
That wasn't the answer I was looking for. Eventually, still bewildered, I got into the car, as Mike urged. Mike, you have a daughter. In the car, trying to be as polite as possible, I asked that, and Mike replied,
Didn't I mention it? I took in my daughter from my previous marriage.
Then Joyce chimed in.
But I'm mostly the one raising her. I'm happy to think I'm finally being freed from this role.
I looked up and said, but Mike told me.
Get along with Nancy and my mom. Come on, try talking to them.
Tentatively, I turned to the back seat and spoke to them. I'm Mia Cantrell, dating Mike. Nice to meet you. Then Joyce said,
Well, I've heard most of it, so no need for introductions.
I said to Nancy, Nancy, nice to meet you. Nancy just responded with a yeah and went back to her book. Amidst the awkward atmosphere, Mike and his mother started talking about some neighbors I didn't know. I was still completely confused. Mike had a child, and he had taken her in without telling me, but who brings their family on a romantic trip without saying anything? What is going to happen on this trip? When we arrived at the hotel, the rooms were divided between Mike and me, and his mother and Nancy. The moment we were alone, I blurted out to Mike, Mike, what is this? You have a daughter, and you never mentioned it, not once in a year of dating. Mike looked bewildered.
Did I forget to mention it? Well, it's no big deal.
I swallowed my words and said, And what about bringing your family on our trip without asking me? Mike still looked puzzled.
What's wrong with that? We're going to be family. So it's fine, right?
No, this conversation isn't going anywhere. I felt dizzy. Mike quickly left to go to the pool, leaving me flustered. Eventually, when it was time for dinner, naturally, Joyce and Nancy were there. The meal was luxurious, but I could hardly swallow. Suddenly, the lights in the dining room dimmed, and sparkly music started to play. Wondering what was happening, staff approached with a cake and a bouquet of bright red roses, handing the bouquet to Mike. Could it be?
Mia, I love you. Let's get married.
Mike said this with a self-satisfied expression on his face. All eyes around us were fixed on our table, waiting for me to say yes. How many people in the world could respond with no? Give me a moment to think. When faced with such an extravagant proposal, I replied with a trembling voice, "Yes, I'd love to." Then the surrounding guests burst into applause and excitement. "Congratulations!" Shouts and whistles came flying in. The lights returned to normal, and the guests went back to their meals. I was holding the bouquet, dumbfounded, watching Nancy greedily eating the cake.
Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about what's next.
Joyce pulled me back to reality.
I'll accept your marriage to Mike, so be grateful. Once the house is built, I'll be moving in with you.
What? I inadvertently exclaimed. Moving in, once the house is built.
Yeah, Mom and I decided to build a larger house. Even though we're family, it's better to have some privacy, right? This is for Mia's benefit too.
Mike said casually.
Dad, I'll have my own room, right?
Of course.
Mike replied. As the three of them got excited, I continued to be stunned. Afterward, I ended up signing the marriage certificate, just going with the flow. I decided to think positively as best as I could. Getting married to the person you love. Mike meant no harm. Looking forward to our own home is exciting, and it's good to have a larger family. Thus, Mike and I registered our marriage. Suddenly, I became the mother of a 10-year-old daughter. Before moving in together, I read books and tried my best to be a good mother to Nancy. On the day we finally started living together, I approached Nancy. Nancy, let's get along. I'd be happy if you could think of me as your mom. Then Nancy looked up at me and said,
That's annoying. Don't bother me too much, old hag.
I was taken aback, but Nancy quickly went to her room. Though I felt uncertain about the future, I convinced myself that Nancy was a teenager and complex feelings are expected with a parent's remarriage. However, life from then on was hellish. Out of nowhere, Joyce said,
From now on, you'll take care of all the household chores.
I explained that my job was very demanding, but Joyce glared at me.
That's no excuse. You came here as Mike's wife, so you'd better work hard at home too.
And truly, Joyce completely abandoned all household duties. If only Mike or Nancy would help. However, they simply did whatever they pleased, never offering to help. Instead, they started complaining the cleaning isn't done right, or the food is too bland. I endured, continuing to do the household chores, but instead of appreciation, they began to treat me coldly. Soon after we got married, Mike said his work got busier, and he started to be away from home more. Business trips increased, and he would go out even on weekends, claiming it was work. Those times, I had to spend with Joyce and Nancy, but I was having a hard time with Nancy.
What? Fish again? I want something like a burger.
Nancy looked displeased at the grilled fish I had prepared for dinner. Nancy, you're a bit picky, so you need to learn to eat everything. Let's properly eat the fish. I said so, but Nancy ignored me. Joyce spoils Nancy like that, giving her treats. When going back to her room, Nancy snapped at me.
You're so annoying, old hack. Don't lecture me.
I had been struggling with how to interact with Nancy. Around that time, I was handed several letters by Mike.
Fill these out.
I looked, and they were documents about renaming a mortgage. What do you mean, fill this out? As I was confused, Mike explained.
I took it out in my name initially. But the repayments are tough. Mia, you are making more at a major company. So you pay it. I'll cover all the living expenses.
I said no multiple times, but Mike wouldn't budge.
So what are we gonna do? Sell the house? Then? It's 4 of us in a cramped apartment. I'm fine with that, you know.
After being told this over and over, I finally agreed to change the house into my name and make the repayments on the condition that Mike pays all the living expenses. However, Joyce and Nancy, who knew nothing of this, continued to torment me. Especially as Nancy, now deep into her teens, became incredibly confrontational. But I became her mother. After all, I kept enduring. After 8 years of this life, Nancy graduated high school, got a job, and moved out. I was briefly relieved. But then Joyce was found to have a malignant tumor and was hospitalized. Things progressed quickly after that. Joyce weakened rapidly and passed away within a year. Mike, at least, seemed affected by his mother's death, crying his eyes out. When I thought of what my mother-in-law had done to me, I did not truly grieve, but I carried out her funeral solemnly. I hadn't seen Nancy in a long time at Joyce's funeral, and she seemed somewhat plumper overall. She lived alone, and I wondered if she had a PUA diet. But on the night of the funeral, she told us something shocking.
I'm pregnant, you know. Not sure who the father is. So, I'm moving back home to raise the child.
What? My eyes widened. Looking at Mike, he seemed just as shocked. No wonder, Nancy was not even 20 yet. Yet, she seems to intend to give birth to a baby whose father is unknown. I expected Mike to scold her, but my expectations were betrayed.
If that's the case, you should come back home. I'd be happy to live with you and my grandchild.
Thanks, Dad.
Nancy seemed pleased. I felt dizzy. Just when I thought life with Joyce was over, Nancy was coming back.
Please look after me again, old hack.
Nancy patted her stomach and smirked. After that, Nancy really did come back home, and as expected, started bossing me around again. Then, a few months later, she gave birth. The baby was a boy, whom Nancy named Sky. Babies are indeed adorable. I hadn't had one myself, but felt the urge to hold him. Nancy, won't you let me hold Sky?
No, I don't want an unrelated stranger to hold my baby.
Next to me, standing there, only Mike happily held Sky. After Nancy came home from the hospital, the care of Sky was mostly left to me. Changing diapers, making formula, and dealing with his nighttime crying all fell to me. Nancy would pick up Sky and spoil him, but when it came to actual care, she did nothing. Yet, I did everything I could for Sky's growth. I bought books on baby food and fed him persistently. and I paid for all the diapers. Just when Sky was starting to say mommy, Sky reached out to me, trying to call out, "Hi, Sky, I'm your grandma." When I tried to teach him that, Nancy snatched him away and corrected him.
No, Sky, she's the old hag.
Nancy, who neither worked nor properly took care of her child, just stayed at home. Yet, I couldn't be strict with Nancy, who still had a small child. Before I knew it, 8 years had passed since Nancy returned. As usual, Mike was often away from home and indifferent to me. When he did come home, he would complain about the taste of the food or how the ironing was done. Somehow, Mike had also stopped contributing the promised living expenses, claiming I need it for something. Nancy was now 27, but incredibly, she still wasn't working. While relying on us for everything, she called me old hag and bossed me around. Since Sky started elementary school, she seemed to go out often during the daytime. As for Sky, having seen me treated like a slave by Nancy from a young age, he regarded me as the lowest in the family.
"Hey, old hag, hand over some pocket money, now."
Such was his way of speaking, even in 2nd grade. He seemed to be causing problems at school, but Nancy did nothing about it. "Sky, I just gave you some the other day. You have to use money wisely." When I said that, Sky glared at me and spewed more abuse. Sometimes, he would even raise his hand to me, and I was exasperated. By this time, I had started recording the awful things Nancy and Sky said to me, saving them as audio files under the name Verbal Abuse Collection. There was no particular reason why I did this, but somehow, doing this work seemed to relieve my stress a bit. I suddenly thought, why am I putting up with this life? It was just because I had agreed to marry Mike. That was all, and it was me who had agreed to marry him. With this resignation and sense of duty, I continued this life. Hated and blamed by the entire family for 8 years, my self-esteem was completely low. At some point, I even started to think I deserved this treatment. Then one day, something happened. I received a call from the police station on my cell phone.
"Is this Mia Cantrell's phone? It's about your husband, Mike."
It was the news that Mike had died in a traffic accident. Apparently, he had mismanaged the steering and fell off a cliff while heading to a resort town not far away. When I arrived at the hospital and confirmed the identity, it was indeed Mike. While I watched Nancy cry her eyes out, I still couldn't feel the reality. My husband had died. Really? Half dazed, I received Mike's belongings from the police. Among them was an unbroken smartphone. Something bothered me. Why had Mike, who said he was going to the Northeast on a business trip, been near the resort town? Alone, I opened Mike's phone and was about to uncover a shocking truth. Well, so that's what it was. Unforgivable. At that moment, I made a decision. The next day, Mike's funeral was to be held. I was responsible for arranging his funeral service. "I have things to do, so go ahead to the funeral venue first." I said that to Nancy and Sky as I sent them to the venue, but Nancy was just crying, and it seemed like she wasn't listening to a word I said. At that time, I had left Mike's tablet at the funeral venue. After dropping them off, I hurried back home and muttered to myself, "All right, let's do this." Then I had the movers take away the furniture, household items, and my personal belongings that I had packed up the night before. The destination was my parents' house, where I had already explained my situation.
Come back home. You can stay as long as you need.
My elderly parents had told me, and I decided to take them up on their offer. After calmly finishing the moving process, I did not go to Mike's funeral venue, but instead returned to my parents' house. At home, my parents had prepared all my favorite foods and were waiting for me. As I was enjoying the meal, my cell phone rang. It was Nancy. I had been ignoring it, but the phone kept ringing every 30 seconds. It was relentless. I sighed and decided to answer the call. "Hello, what is it?" On the other end, Nancy yelled,
Old hat, where the hell are you? The funeral has already started. What are you doing? Get back here now.
Nancy's shrill voice made me grimace. "Can you stop yelling? I don't plan on attending the funeral." Then Nancy screamed through tears,
Pissed off. Where on earth is there a wife who wouldn't attend her husband's funeral? Everything's a mess here. Just do what you need to do.
I replied calmly, "You should be able to manage the funeral by talking to the funeral director. You're 27 now. You should be able to handle it. Good luck." With that, I hung up on Nancy, still screaming. The phone rang loudly again, but I continued to ignore it. I spent some relaxing time at home for the first time in a while. As the time the funeral was probably ending approached, I took a shower, dried my hair, and saw over 200 missed calls on my cell phone. Most were from Nancy, but the latest missed call was from an unknown number. I decided to call it back.
Hello, is this Mia?
It was Mike's brother, Ken, whom I had met a few times before. He was currently the leader of Mike's relatives. "It's been a while, Ken." As I responded, Ken, with a voice mixed with anger and confusion, said,
Mia, where are you? Why aren't you at Mike's funeral? It was complete chaos here, and frankly, it's indecent.
I sighed and asked, "Is the whole family there?" Ken confirmed, "Yes, but..."
Nancy checked the house and said all the appliances and your belongings are gone. I don't understand what's happening.
I simply answered, "Yes, I moved out during the funeral." Ken exclaimed, "What?" And I could hear the murmurs of the family in the background.
What are you thinking? How can you not attend your husband's funeral and move out during it? Come back here and explain yourself properly.
Nancy screamed over the phone, but I told Ken, "I've left a tablet at the funeral services reception. I'll make a video call, and we can talk about the reasons." After hanging up the phone, I took out my tablet. I made a video call to the tablet I had left behind at the venue. Immediately, it connected, and I could see Nancy, Sky, Ken, and many other relatives in the background. As soon as they saw my face, Nancy, with tear streaks on her cheeks, yelled at me,
What are you doing? Get over here now. We'll talk after you get here.
I calmly responded, "No, I will not be coming there." Nancy started berating me furiously. The relatives looked at me skeptically. Ken, somewhat perplexed, said,
That's incredibly unreasonable. You're Mike's wife and Nancy's mother, aren't you? Don't you have any feelings for Mike? You were husband and wife after all.
That's when I decided to tell the truth. Of course, I was shocked when Mike died, and I intended to hold the funeral properly, but that intention disappeared quickly.
Why?
Ken asked, bewildered. Ken, everyone, please listen to this first. I then took out Mike's cell phone from his belongings and played a voicemail.
Hey Mike, where are you? You're already late. We agreed to have a romantic getaway at a fancy hotel today.
Everyone on the tablet gasped. I continued to play the voicemail.
Why aren't you picking up your phone? Did your wife find out? You told me I love you more than that ugly woman. You liar.
I paused to play back. The relatives in the background were murmuring loudly. As you heard, Mike was on his way to a cheating trip when he had the accident. There were also quite a few couple photos in his phone that I can't show here. I told everyone, still in shock, on the screen. Moreover, Mike hated me. He didn't contribute to the living expenses and only complained when he was home. And to find out he was cheating, it would be absurd to still have feelings for him. Ken muttered, shaken.
Mike did. That is. How could he?
That's awful.
I wouldn't want to attend my husband's funeral either.
A female relative shouted from the background. Then Nancy, in a panic, argued.
Even if Dad was cheating, you should at least attend the funeral. It's your fault for not being attractive enough to keep him.
That's when Sky chimed in.
Old hag, where did you put the TV? I can't play my games.
The relatives looked on, appalled, seemingly unaware of Nancy and Sky's indifference. Ken was holding his head. Yes, even if I had grown tired of Mike's cheating, I might have attended the funeral if I still cared for Nancy and Sky. But you can hear from their words now, can't you? I've been oppressed at home all this time. Nancy gasped. The relatives looked at her and Sky with disdain. That's when I played my edited verbal abuse collection.
Don't wash your stuff with mine. Your germs are going to get on me. Seriously, it's disgusting.
Sky's voice was also on the recording.
Old hag, didn't I tell you not to give me carrots? Are you senile? Go buy me juice. You're useless.
Nancy and Sky's abuses continued to play. The relatives' expressions turned grimmer.
Hey, stop it. Recording us is sneaky.
Nancy yelled, but I continued playing without expression. Sky looked bewildered, not fully grasping the situation. As you can see, it may have been unreasonable for me not to attend the funeral, and I apologize if I caused any inconvenience. But as you heard, this is how Nancy has been treating me. Sky has also been influenced by her and treats me like a slave. I paused for a moment and then stated, I have no more feelings for Mike or for them. That's why I didn't attend the funeral and why I moved out.
You bastard.
Nancy started to yell at me, but Ken quickly interjected.
Mia, I'm sorry for Nancy's behavior. I apologize on behalf of Mike as well. You don't have to come to the funeral. They've done enough to deserve this.
I appreciate your understanding, I responded, and the relatives nodded somberly.
I'll also scold Nancy and Sky on this side. Thank you for enduring and staying as part of their family for so long,
Ken said, bowing to me. I bowed back and then ended the call on the tablet. I slept well that night. I don't know how the funeral ended after that. 2 days later, Ken contacted me again to apologize.
Despite holding the funeral service, it was a mess. Nancy and Sky kept blaming you, and the relatives have completely disowned them now. I hope you stay well and find happiness. Mia.
After ending the call with Ken, I returned to my daily life. However, a week after Mike's funeral, as I was leaving work and stepped outside the building, there were Nancy and Sky. I was furious, and Nancy dragged me to a cafe. I don't want anything to do with you anymore, but do you need something? I asked, and Nancy said,
I don't want to see your face either, but you wouldn't answer your phone, so I had no choice. Tell me where Dad's inheritance is now.
Inheritance, I murmured, and Nancy became enraged.
There has to be Dad's bank account with money in it. I only found $1,000 in cash at home. You must have taken out my dad's money.
I calmly told her. That was all there was to Mike's inheritance.
What?
Nancy froze, and I explained. He couldn't save any money, and towards the end, I was the one paying the living expenses. Also, it seems he was quite generous to his mistress. Nancy's face grew paler by the second.
What? So you're serious? There's really not even $1,000 left from Dad's inheritance. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live, especially with Sky here?
I flashed a grin and said, just work. Isn't that what everyone else does? Nancy fell silent for a moment, but then burst out.
That's right. What about the insurance money? You work at an insurance company, and Dad must have had life insurance, right? When do we get that money?
After sipping my coffee, I told her. He always found signing up for insurance too troublesome and did nothing about it. The only policy was one I took out on him.
How much will that be?
Nancy yelled, so I replied. Well, at least $500,000 will be coming. Nancy's face lit up. But I immediately added, well, since I'm both the policy holder and the beneficiary, it really doesn't concern you. Stunned, Nancy blurted out.
What? Are you saying we don't get a penny?
Yes, that's right. As I spoke, Nancy shouted.
Then you need to continue taking care of us. You're my mother and Sky's grandmother, right?
I calmly stated. I've already filed to end our family ties. You and I are now strangers. I never legally adopted you, nor do I have any obligation to support you. Nancy persisted.
Don't you care about Sky at all? If I'm struggling, Sky will too.
Sky was playing a game next to us during this conversation. Seeing that, I sighed. So you should work to prevent struggling. That's what a mother does, right? I did. When Nancy turned pale and was at a loss for words, I asked, By the way, have you spent any of Mike's savings? She answered,
Of course, I needed it for living expenses.
I chuckled. Too bad for you. Mike had debts, about $60,000, I think. Since you've touched the inheritance, you've inherited the debt too. I, on the other hand, have renounced my inheritance. Seeing the color drain from Nancy's face, I showed her the collection emails on his phone. As Nancy trembled, I continued. Oh right, about the house. Since I've been paying the mortgage, and it's in my name, I've decided to sell it. You need to move out soon, okay? Then Nancy screamed.
Are you taking the house from us?
Yes, I am. I looked at her seriously. As Nancy's face rapidly changed colors, she suddenly bowed deeply across the table.
Mia, I apologize for everything up to now. I'm sorry for what Dad did too. So please come back home, otherwise we're doomed.
As I remained silent, Nancy pleaded with tears.
Please, Mom, don't abandon us.
I smiled at them one last time and said, I will never forget how terribly you've treated me. Now you two should enjoy your lives together. And with a final act of kindness, I paid for our drinks at the cafe and left. Afterward, Nancy desperately searched for any other assets Mike might have left, but of course, there were none. Nancy ended up bearing Mike's debts, and she and Sky went around to relatives begging, please lend us money, let us stay with you. However, having seen their true colors at Mike's funeral, the relatives refused, saying, we want nothing to do with you. Without anyone's help, they were left with nothing but debts. I issued an eviction order to them without mercy. Of course, Nancy resisted, but I conveyed through my lawyer. If you refuse to leave, are you prepared to cover the costs of a lawsuit? Thus, Nancy and Sky reluctantly left the house. Eventually, they moved into an almost dilapidated apartment. Unable to survive on Mike's inheritance alone, Nancy had to start working. However, due to her personality, she quickly caused trouble at work and seemed to have quit. Now, Nancy is reportedly working multiple part-time jobs day and night. As for Sky, the change in environment made him even more rebellious, hurling insults at Nancy, who had always been close to him, and sometimes even becoming violent. Currently, he calls her an old hag, which she has to accept as a result of her own actions. I hope Nancy will face the hardships of life in society from now on. And I hope she can raise Sky a bit better, although it might be too late. For my part, the sale of the house and Mike's life insurance payout have considerably boosted my finances. I identified Mike's affair partner and claimed compensation. The affair partner managed to come up with the money by selling the luxury items Mike had given her. I've moved out of my parents' home and am now living alone in an apartment close to my office. Work has been going smoothly, perhaps because I'm free from stress, and I've decided to accept a promotion I had previously turned down due to my busy personal life. Soon, I plan to reward myself with a long-desired trip abroad. I've had enough of marriage and have decided to dedicate myself to my career and take care of my elderly parents. Going forward, I want to live positively, unbound by anything, and take good care of myself.
Busted, huh? Let's get a divorce. We're moving out of this house.
Right. Divorce seems like the only option.
Yay, that's the plan.
The plan? Do you both understand what you're doing? John, are you really going to abandon your newborn child? And Mom, are you really leaving Dad just because he's become physically disabled? Do you have any idea how morally wrong that is in society?
Oh, don't talk about it as if I'm abandoning anyone. We're leaving this house, but I have no intention of divorcing your father.
Even I, who tried to stay as calm as possible, couldn't hide my confusion at my mother's response. My name is Emily. I'm 32 years old and a corporate employee. I've been married to John for 3 years now. We were colleagues at the same company, and John was assigned to my team when he joined the company as a new graduate. As I helped him with his work and showed him the ropes, we got to know each other better and started going out for meals together after work. It was around the time John was getting the hang of his job. After one of our dinners, he confessed, "I want to marry you." As an only child, I always wished for siblings when I was young, so I saw John as like a cute little brother to me. So honestly, I was taken aback by his marriage proposal. The fact that I was 6 years older than him added to my hesitation. We haven't been dating for that long, and I'm quite a bit older than you. Are you sure that's okay? I shared my hesitations with John honestly. He answered without any doubt.
The age difference doesn't matter. I love you, Emily.
There was a strength in John's eyes as he looked straight at me. It felt like an undiluted love. I decided to believe in John's words. After accepting John's proposal, things moved swiftly. We immediately went to greet John's parents. My in-laws welcomed me with open arms. Like John, they were direct and communicated clearly, which I found comforting. Next, I introduced John to my parents.
What an honest and polite person he is.
Such a refreshing and fine young man.
It was rare for my somewhat shy mother to praise a man she just met so highly. Anyway, I was glad John received such compliments.
Your parents are so kind. I was a bit embarrassed by all the praise.
John seemed to really like my parents too. So we were able to get married without any issues. After getting married, I continued to work for a while without quitting my job. The company was considerate, and although my husband changed departments, my honest and straightforward husband quickly became beloved in his new department. He was proactive in helping out with household chores. Teaching him how to cook, do laundry, and clean one by one reminded me of the times I taught him work tasks when he was a new employee, and it was fun.
Emily, your cooking is delicious. Did you learn that from your mom?
My mom wasn't good at cooking, so I went to cooking classes to improve my skills.
Your cooking is always healthy, but the flavors are still on point.
Can you tell? My mom was always into classical ballet, paying close attention to her figure and posture. That's why I've always been careful about the food I prepare.
Classical ballet, no wonder. She's beautiful and has an amazing figure.
Tell that to my mom when you meet her next time. She'll be thrilled.
Yeah, let's visit your parents' house soon.
I had heard that my friends' husbands usually disliked visiting their wives' parents, but my husband was eager to visit mine. For me, thinking my parents must be feeling lonely with their only daughter married and out of the house, it was a blessing to visit them often. Our marriage was going smoothly, to say the least. But unfortunately, tragedy can strike unexpectedly. My father, George, was involved in a sudden traffic accident and became paralyzed. He was forced into a wheelchair life.
Emily, can you come over today? A caregiver comes during the day, but it's stuff by myself at night.
The image of my mother, not great with household chores, struggling to care for my father came to mind. It would be serious if she accidentally caused him an injury. Understood. I'll come over after work. When I told my husband about going to my parents' house, he immediately offered to drive me there. You don't have to go out of your way to drop me off. But thank you. It's a big help.
Don't mention it. It's only natural to help out when your mom is in trouble, right?
He didn't seem to be forcing himself at all. In fact, I was amazed at how effortlessly he offered to help.
Emily, thank you for coming. And John, I'm so happy you came too. George will be pleased.
Not at all. I've always wanted to visit.
Emily, it's about time for George to go to the bathroom. Can you check on him?
Got it. I'll go to Dad's room.
Is there anything I can help with? Please don't hesitate to ask.
Could you help carry some stuff? Ever since George needed a wheelchair, it's been hard for me to move heavy things. I'll show you where. Could you come with me?
Sure, leave it to me.
Without showing any displeasure, my husband followed my mother. Watching his back, I felt deeply grateful to him from the bottom of my heart.
Emily, John came too.
Dad, were you awake? Or did John's voice wake you up?
It's fine. It's good to see you're well. More importantly, Emily, I'm sorry for all this trouble. I keep causing you hardships.
Don't talk like that. More importantly, Dad, do you need to go to the bathroom?
Yeah, maybe you could take me.
As I slowly pushed my father's wheelchair, I remembered how he had supported me through college. I thought it was time to give back. After caring for my father, my husband and I went back home. Sitting in the living room, sipping tea, John made a suggestion.
Given the situation, why don't we live with your parents? From what I've seen today, it's going to be tough for your mom and dad to live on their own.
That might be true, but are you sure you're okay with that, John?
I'm fine with it. We'll make it work.
I was truly grateful for my husband's suggestion. It might be overthinking, but it felt like he had voiced something I had been considering for a while. Unlike us, my mother was significantly younger than my father. My father had managed a well-known trading company. My mother, who had performed in classical ballet when she was young, caught my father's eye when he happened to attend her performance with some colleagues. He waited for the show to end, hurriedly sent a colleague to buy flowers, and then gave my mother a big bouquet, which led to their relationship. Initially, my mother struggled with household chores, so my grandmother would come over to help with cleaning and cooking. Come to think of it, the seasoning in my cooking does resemble my grandmother's. No doubt, she cooked with my mother's figure in mind. My mother was someone who, as long as she looked beautiful, was indifferent to other things. My father was tolerant of such an attitude, seemingly content with just admiring my mother's beauty. I sometimes thought that's just how marriage is, but when I went to college and started living on my own, I realized our family's values were quite different from societal norms. Starting cooking classes was also a way to remind myself that our household's values weren't the norm. My mother couldn't even take care of my father properly. I didn't dislike my mother's pursuit of beauty, but considering my father's current situation, I felt the need to be by his side and take care of him. I decided to accept my husband's suggestion and saw it as a good opportunity to tell him something. Hey, John, there's something I want to tell you about living with my parents.
Yay, what is it?
I think I'm pregnant.
Really? I'm going to be a dad?
Yes. That's why I'm really grateful you suggested we live with my parents.
Thank you.
My husband was excited about us moving to my parents' house and celebrated my pregnancy. When I immediately told my mother, she was as thrilled as my husband, saying, "That's very helpful. Come tomorrow if you can. You're more than welcome." So my husband and I moved in with my parents, starting a 4-person household. Upon moving back, I quit my job to prepare for the baby and take care of my father. Even my mother, who had been indifferent to household chores, started going to the supermarket to buy the groceries and daily necessities I had listed. My husband cared for my father's well-being, and my father seemed happy to have a male companion. Ironically, my father's injury seemed to deepen our bond as a family of 4. The family gatherings, made possible by my husband's suggestion, made me want to thank him all over again.
Hey, John, I want to go shopping. Can you drive? It's a bit far, but the meat is really cheap there.
Understood. I'll go with you anywhere.
By the weekend, it had become a habit for my mother and husband to go shopping together. I wonder what kind of relationship people would think the young-looking mother and my husband have just by looking at them. They might appear more like siblings than parent and child. My mother looked that young. Time passed, and I safely gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The whole family congratulated me on my childbirth and celebrated it. Among them, my father's joy was exceptional, as he looked at his first grandchild with a smile I had never seen before. Since it's a boy, it's not a dream that he might take over my father's trading company in the future. Just when I thought our family would become even livelier with the new addition, misfortune struck without warning. One day, when I was about to go buy diapers and formula, I found that the usual store was out of stock. So I decided to return home and drive to another store that sells baby products. It was a holiday, and although my husband was at home, I didn't want to bother him with shopping in case he bought the wrong items. So I drove myself to the store.
Why don't you take some time for yourself and stop by a cafe after shopping? It's rare for you to get out of the house.
I remembered my husband saying that as he saw me off at the front door. I appreciated his thoughtfulness, but for some reason, I also had a bad feeling. Despite not being fully recovered from childbirth and lacking in strength, I wondered why he wouldn't accompany me to the store. Normally, my husband would insist on driving even if I said I was okay. Unconsciously, I made a U-turn and headed back home, thinking of an excuse for my son's return. As I arrived, I heard a strange noise. Following the sound, it seemed to come from my mother's room on the second floor. My father's spacious room, once on the second floor, is now ours, and due to his wheelchair, his room is on the first floor. My mother's room is next to ours on the second floor. First, I quietly peeked into my father's room. He was lying in bed, taking his usual nap. There was no sign of my mother or husband on the first floor. The bad feeling I had when I turned the car around was turning into a sense of foreboding. With each step up the stairs to the second floor, the strange noise grew louder. Upon reaching the second floor hallway, the strange noises were accompanied by the heavy breathing of a woman. There was no room for doubt. I was oddly calm. Standing in front of my mother's room, my bad feeling turned into certainty. I took out my smartphone, opened the door, and simultaneously hit the record button for video. There they were, my husband and my mother, entangled and naked. Silence ensued. They stood there, mouths agape, unable to say anything even if prompted. I spoke quietly. First, get dressed, then both of you come downstairs. As coming down the stairs, I noticed the phone camera was still in shooting mode, so I hit the stop button on the recording. I didn't want to watch what I had recorded, but it could serve as evidence if needed. When did the two of you start this affair? My husband wouldn't look up, avoiding eye contact. In contrast, my mother sat defiantly in a chair, crossing her legs.
Well, since it's out in the open, I'll be clear. It wasn't long after you and your husband moved into this house. That's when John said he loved me.
Really?
I'm sorry, Emily. Your mother was so attractive. I couldn't control my feelings.
I thought it was rather my place to be unable to control my feelings. Even though I tried to remain calm, there was a limit to my patience. Just because you can't control your feelings doesn't mean everything is forgivable, right?
Whether it's forgivable or not doesn't really matter anymore, does it, John?
Yes,
We knew it was unforgivable from the start. That's why we had a plan in case it ever came out. Right, John?
Since it's out, let's divorce. We'll leave this house.
Yay, we have no choice but to divorce.
Yay, that's what I plan to do.
That's what you plan. Do you both understand what this means? John, are you going to abandon your newborn son? Mom, are you going to leave Dad now that he's disabled? Do you both truly understand how morally wrong this is?
Oh, don't talk so negatively. I may be leaving this house, but I have no intention of divorcing George.
Even trying to stay calm, I couldn't hide my confusion at my mother's response. Leaving but not divorcing, what does that mean?
Do you know how many years I've been with him? As his wife, I have a right to his inheritance. If I divorce him now, I'll lose everything, won't I?
My mother was refusing to divorce my father just to lay claim to his inheritance. Indeed, even if they're living apart, she still have the right to claim her share of the inheritance as part of their marital property. What a greedy person. That's just rotten.
I'm only claiming what's rightfully mine. Why would I divorce and willingly give up what I could have?
My anger turned into sheer disbelief. John, I'm definitely leaving you. My husband, who had been looking down, seemed persuaded by my mother's argument and finally looked at me.
I understand, but I'll refuse the divorce depending on the conditions.
Conditions? What conditions?
The condition is that you and George agree that Sarah won't divorce him. I'm fine with divorcing you, but in return, Sarah and George's marital status stays as it is.
With those terms my husband laid down, I realized the depth of their relationship. And apparently, he was under her influence. There's no way I can agree to that. How far gone are you both?
Then I can't divorce you either. No need to pay child support. Now, what's your choice?
I realized I was at a disadvantage, but I couldn't just accept their terms. I can't decide this alone. I'll discuss it with Dad before making any decision. I said that and headed to my father's room. The door to his room was slightly ajar. Before I could say anything, he gestured for me to be quiet and started speaking softly.
Emily, don't worry about me. Divorce John as soon as possible.
I realized he must have overheard our conversation, but doing that would mean you can't divorce that woman.
It's okay. I have a plan. Just divorce that man right now. As I say.
Despite his weakened physical state, there was strength in his eyes and weight in his words. I figured things would be okay if I just went along with what he said. Believing in him, I went to declare that I would divorce my husband and accept keeping my parents' marriage intact.
Let me know as soon as he passes away.
With those parting words, my mother and ex-husband left our family home. Dad, I'm sorry. It's all because of me that this happened. If only I hadn't married that man.
There's no need to worry. Those two will face the consequences of their actions soon enough.
I couldn't grasp what my father was planning, but I could see in his eyes that he was sure of his victory. What's your plan, Dad?
I'm not foolish. Here's the strategy.
With that, he slowly and carefully shared his thoughts with me. So that's it. Then we can certainly get back at them. From then on, I lived my life without concern for those two. During the day, a caregiver took care of my father, and I returned to work. My son grew healthy and strong. I've gotten pretty used to taking care of my dad after coming home from work. He enjoyed playing with his grandson. Watching them play so affectionately, I realized my son bore more resemblance to my father than to my ex-husband. I hoped that when he grew up, he would be like my father. 3 years passed amidst these busy days. My father had been unwell for a while and was hospitalized. His condition never improved, and he passed away quietly. I was calm. because I had prepared myself since his hospitalization. Looking at my father's peaceful face, I felt ready for what was to come. I immediately started arranging for his funeral. Many people attended my father's funeral. He was well liked. Among the attendees, I spotted those too.
It's been a while. Good to see you're doing well.
What are you two doing here?
When one's husband dies, it's only natural to show up at the funeral.
After abandoning your own husband and grandson, you have the nerve to show up.
You know, Emily, men and women are bound by instinct. Rationality doesn't apply to those drawn together by instinct. Understand?
If you believe that, why come here? Why not stay together forever? My ex-husband interjected as if he had been waiting for the moment.
We came to fulfill a promise.
Promise?
As we discussed before, Sarah has a right to your father's inheritance, doesn't she?
Yes, I came to claim the inheritance as promised. Tell me how much I'm entitled to receive.
When they brought up the inheritance, I had my response ready. Understood. However, there's not a single cent of inheritance to give you.
What? What kind of nonsense are you talking about?
Don't try to act tough by lying here, Emily. Sarah should be entitled to a portion of the inheritance, right?
I'm telling you there's no inheritance to give to someone who's already divorced.
When did he and I get divorced? I don't recall agreeing to a divorce.
Mom, have you forgotten? You once confronted Dad with a divorce paper bearing your signature. The confidence on my mother and ex-husband's faces seemed to falter. I pressed on. Dad kept the divorce papers you thrust at him. Soon after you two left the family home, I filed them. There's no expiration date on a divorce paper, meaning from the moment I submitted it while Dad was alive, your marriage was officially dissolved. You're now nothing more than a stranger to Dad, not entitled to any inheritance. Can you understand this situation with reason, not instinct? I could see my mother and ex-husband's faces turn pale. Do you understand now? So there's nothing more to discuss with you two. This isn't a place for you. Before we knew it, a crowd of Dad's admirers had gathered around us, all of them directing hostility towards the two who had betrayed and hurt Dad and me. Realizing the situation, my mother and ex-husband quickly left without another word. I heard they had been living a life of luxury far beyond their means, quickly depleting my mother's savings and accruing debt, hoping to repay it with the expected inheritance from my father. But their plans were completely foiled. Where they are now and how they're living is unknown to me. Frankly, it doesn't concern me. I had started working at the trading company my father ran years ago. He taught me everything about the business during his lifetime. Thanks to that, I was able to take over as president after him. Now as president, I'm running the company my father built while raising my son. I feel my son's resemblance to my father grows stronger with each passing day. Someday, I hope my son will take over the company that my father built and I've protected, and make it even greater. But even if he chooses a different path, I plan to support his dreams with all my heart. As a parent, it's my duty to see him stand on his own 2 feet. No matter what happens, I'll never betray my son. That's what being a parent is all about.
After finishing an unfamiliar shift, I was walking home at night. Earlier in the day, I had been roped into helping my son's wife, Christina, with the preparations for a party that I couldn't even attend, doubling my exhaustion. But it was a celebration for my granddaughter, Emma, and just imagining how happy my grandson, David, would be as a big brother kept my spirits up. As I passed by my house, I noticed the lights were still on. Glancing at my watch, it was already past 9 p.m. I realized it was time to put David to bed. But as I looked towards the house again, I saw something unbelievable. There was David, sitting alone in the garden, staring into the room. Why is he outside? David, what's wrong? I rushed over. Seeing me, David smiled with relief. But the next moment, he burst into tears. What happened? Why are you out here alone? David, seemingly wanting to say something, started with an apologetic tone. It's Emma's birthday today, but they said I can't join because it's a family-only celebration, he sobbed. That's terrible. Unable to bear it, I silently pulled David by the arm and walked out of the gate. Not again, something that shouldn't have happened, happened. You haven't eaten anything since lunch, right? I'm tired from work too, and I'm starving. Let's go grab something tasty to eat. I tried to sound as cheerful as usual to comfort David. Sensing something, David brightened up and responded. I left David alone at the table in the diner for a moment. Pretending to go to the drink area, I took out my cell phone. It's been a while since I've contacted them, but I wonder if they'll answer. After a few rings, a puzzled voice answered. Hello. I said my name, apologized for calling late at night, and briefly explained the situation David was in. The person on the line responded, I'll be there right away, and hung up. After a while, a woman entered the diner. When I raised my hand towards the entrance, the woman noticed and hurried over to our table. David, looking up at her with a confused expression, was embraced by the woman, unable to hold back her tears.
Mom, is that you?
I am Emily Johnson. I am 57 years old. My husband passed away a year ago, and I live in the house he left behind. My family consists of my son, his wife, and 2 grandchildren, making us a family of 5. It's a complicated story, but my son, Mike, is divorced, and his wife, Christina, is his second. David, the older grandchild, is from Mike's first marriage, and therefore has no blood relation to Christina and the younger grandchild, Emma. Mike returned to our house with David 3 years ago after his first wife cheated on him. At that time, David was emotionally unstable, yearning for his mother in this unfamiliar house. He was only 2 years old. Seeing David like that, I devotedly took care of him. The following year, Mike brought Christina home.
Mom, I'm going to remarry her,
he announced suddenly. While I thought he was busy with work, he was actually dating her. Although his own son was in emotional turmoil, he had been out having fun, which left me speechless and disappointed, even though he's my own son.
Also, she's pregnant,
he added, shocking me further.
Sorry for the sudden news, but I hope we can get along.
It's a hassle to look for a new house, and this one's big with extra rooms, so we thought we'd just live here. That's all right, isn't it?
Mike said with such audacity. But knowing she was pregnant, how could I have turned her away? And so began our life together with my son, Mike, his wife, Christina, and my grandkids. I don't know much about Mike's ex-wife since we lived apart, But Christina didn't do much housework. She seemed to get along well with David, so I thought she couldn't be all bad. However, using her pregnancy as an excuse, she left all the housework to me. I was working part-time and honestly asked her to help a bit with the chores.
I have terrible morning sickness. My stomach hurts too much.
But she would always have an excuse. I couldn't push her. She seemed well enough, but I know pregnancy can be hard, so I didn't say anything. It feels like I'm being taken advantage of. My husband, who always listened to me, is no longer here.
If she says she's suffering, you should be more considerate. No one likes a strict mill these days. Anyway, is dinner ready yet?
Mike didn't take me seriously when I tried talking to him about it. I didn't like the way he said, anyway. It was tough holding back my heavy feelings every day. As these days went by, Emma was born. I couldn't see David much when he was born because we lived far away. Living with a baby close by, what a joy it is. Of course, it doesn't mean I love David any less. Seeing a new life born, David's eyes sparkled with pride at becoming a big brother, determined to protect his little sister. I could sense his feelings. I vowed in my heart to love both equally, without comparison. As Emma grew, Christina became harsher with David. She didn't carry him in her womb, and now that she had her own daughter, her love for Emma seemed to take precedence. I guess some women get irritable after giving birth, so maybe it's understandable. I decided to step in and support David more. But Christina's attitude only got worse. Still, David wanted to believe in Christina, who had been kind to him. He tried to help around the house and attract her attention. One day, I came home from my morning shift and heard Christina's shouting from outside.
Why can't you do this simple thing? You're just making more work for me.
It seemed she was scolding David. Apparently, he tried to make baby formula, but accidentally spilled it. There, it's just a kid's mistake. No need to get so mad. He's trying to help. That's enough, right? I tried to calm Christina.
Emily, please keep quiet. If you're going to interfere, you clean up the spilled formula.
I couldn't believe she yelled at a child like that. The depth of a child's feelings when scolded by their parents is immeasurable. Sadness, frustration, regret. Seeing David trying to hold back his tears and emotions, I felt utterly heartbroken. Let Grandma take care of this, David. You've done a lot already. I hugged and comforted him, then cleaned the white-covered floor.
When little Emma does something clumsy, we say, "Oops." Big brother is really useless, isn't he?
Christina glanced at us scornfully before speaking to Emma, who still doesn't understand words. David, ignored by Christina, was trying his best. I struggled to contain my anger towards her. At dinner that evening, I noticed David was missing, so I asked Christina about it. What happened to David?
I don't know. Maybe he ran away from home after I scolded him.
Christina casually replied, That couldn't be possible. David is only 4 years old. Where could he run away to? Just then, Mike came home. "Mike, I can't find David anywhere," I said.
He's a boy. Maybe he's at the nearby park or something. Anyway, hi Emma, Daddy's home.
Mike seemed unconcerned. It was already past 7 p.m. Even if David was at the park, shouldn't they be worried? While Mike and Christina started eating the dinner I prepared, I rushed outside to look for David. I checked the nearby park, the route to the kindergarten, the usual grocery store. But David was nowhere to be found. Maybe he's back home by now, I thought, heading back. As I was about to open the front door, I heard a sound like metal being hit from the backyard. We have a small shed there. The sound seemed to be coming from it. No way, it can't be. That just wouldn't happen. Approaching the shed, I heard the sound of the door being banged on and a faint voice. "David, David, is that you?" I flung the door open to find David, his face swollen from crying, sitting there sobbing. How could they do this? I picked up David and hurried back to where Mike and Christina were eating, with a furious look. Seeing me like that, they looked at each other awkwardly. "What on earth is going on here?" I demanded, still holding the sobbing David.
I just heard from Christina."
Mike stammered. Christina, without a hint of remorse, blurted out,
"It's David's fault. He ruined Emma's milk."
What were they talking about? Just because he made a little mistake, they locked him in the shed. How could he eat dinner pretending not to know? I raised my voice in disbelief. "What are you saying? It was you who made him do it. Even so, this is too much. Don't you have any sense of being a mother?" Mike tried to intervene.
Now, Mom, calm down. Christina is just tired and irritable from taking care of Emma. Cut her some slack.
If you knew about this, you're just as guilty, locking a 4-year-old in a cramped, dark place like that. I was at a loss for words.
Well, I did tell her it was too much,
Mike said, trying to shift the blame onto Christina alone. Christina glared at him. "You should have let David out before stopping her. Are you even fit to be his father?" I said, silencing them both. I warned them. "If something like this ever happens again, I'll have you two leave this house."
What?
Mike stammered, and Christina looked down, unable to look me in the eye. I hoped that by saying this, it would prevent any repeat of such incidents. Without another look at them, I took David to the bath, fed him the reheated dinner, and tucked him into a warm bed. Throughout, David was desperately defending them.
"It's my fault. I made Mom mad. She's not bad. Dad just got home from work. He was tired and hungry."
Hearing his brave words made me feel even sorrier for him. I resolved then to never take my eyes off their actions again. After that incident, Mike and Christina never apologized, but my main concern was for David's well-being. Despite what he had been through, he always helped around the house and never lost his smile. I don't know if my constant vigilance or their genuine remorse was the reason, but there were no more terrible incidents towards David. Although Christina sometimes made him do excessive chores or was harsh, David himself said,
"Grandma, I'm fine. I want to help Mom. Plus, Emma is cute. As a big brother, I need to be strong."
His brave words left me speechless. I didn't want to intervene too much for fear that it might worsen Christina's mood and lead to another terrible incident. I wanted to avoid that at all costs. However, to my relief, Mike and Christina's behavior towards David eventually returned to how it was before Emma was born. It seemed that peace had returned, and I gradually let my guard down, returning to our usual life. 2 months had passed since that dreadful event. Peaceful days continued. One day, I was asked by my manager to change my shift at work. Usually, I worked only in the mornings, but they were short-staffed for the evening shift until closing. Since the incident with David, I had reduced my working days, and being someone who can't say no when asked for a favor, I agreed to the shift change.
Oh, Emily. Aren't you going to your part-time job today?
There's been a shift change. I'll be working this evening, so I'm counting on you to handle dinner tonight. I replied. Christina looked visibly annoyed at first, but then her expression suddenly brightened, as if she had an idea.
Then, how about we have an early birthday party for Emma today?
Planning a party while knowing I wouldn't be home. It seemed I wasn't invited to my dear granddaughter's first birthday celebration.
Well, I better start preparing for the party. I'll tell Mike to come home early.
Christina said, oblivious to my feelings.
So, Emily, I'm going out to shop. Please take care of Emma. Since you can't attend the party, that's the least you can do.
She left Emma with me under the guise of shopping, giving us some time alone. How selfish she can be. Resigned to not making a fuss, I quickly took Emma from Christina and let her go shopping. That evening, after finishing my unusual shift, I walked home in the dark. I was doubly tired because Christina had made me help prepare for a party I couldn't even attend. But the thought of celebrating Emma and seeing David happy kept my spirits up. As I passed by the house, I noticed it was still brightly lit. It was already past 9 p.m. I needed to put David to bed soon. Hopefully, I won't be stuck with cleaning up after the party. As I looked towards the house again, I saw a sight that I couldn't believe. David was sitting alone in the garden, staring into the room. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Why is David outside? I hurried to the front entrance, then rushed around to the garden. David, what's wrong? As I approached, he gave a look of relief, and then, the next moment, his face crumpled as he began to cry. What happened? Why are you out here alone? I asked, trying not to barrage him with questions, but I couldn't help myself. David, trembling with sobs, couldn't find the words to reply. How about we go inside for now? I suggested. He looked at me with a surprised expression, as if he wanted to say something. Then he started with an apologetic tone.
Today is Emma's birthday. But they said it's a family-only celebration, so I'm not allowed in.
He murmured through sobs. How could they? I couldn't hold back any more and, without a word, took David's arm and started walking out of the gate. Not again, this shouldn't have happened.
What's wrong, Grandma? Are you mad? Where are we going?
David asked me anxiously, realizing I had let my emotions get the better of me. I replied, You've been outside without eating anything since lunch, right? Grandma is tired from work too, and I'm hungry. Let's go get something delicious to eat. I spoke in my usual cheerful tone to reassure him. It seemed to work, as David responded brightly. Bringing a child to a diner at night. I was worried about what others might think, but none of the other customers or even the staff seemed to pay us any attention. I left David at the table and stood up. I'm going to get us some juice, I said, pretending to head to the drink area, but instead taking out my cell phone. It's been a while, but I wonder if they'll answer. After a few rings, a puzzled voice answered. I said my name and apologized for calling late at night, and briefly explained David's current situation. The person on the line said she'd come right away and hung up. When I returned to the table, David was eating the fries he had ordered.
You took a while, didn't you?
He asked, drinking the melon soda I had placed on the table and looking at me anxiously. I couldn't decide what you'd like to drink. I made an excuse, but David quickly changed his expression.
I love melon soda,
he said, cheerfully gulping it down. He's still just 5 years old. Coming to a diner at this hour, he didn't even get excited. He waited quietly at the table, even concerned about looking mature. Why does such a good child have to go through this? I could only watch, filled with regret, as he quietly munched on his fries. When David finished his fries, he seemed restless. What do you think? Should we order a hamburger too? I suggested.
Maybe we should go home soon? Won't they get mad?
He replied with a worried look on his face. Even though he said that we couldn't go home just yet. How should I explain this to David? As I pondered this, a woman entered the diner. I glanced at the entrance and waved to her. The woman noticed and hurried over to our table.
Who is that?
David looked up at her with a puzzled expression. The woman, unable to hold back her tears, embraced David. This was Ashley, David's biological mother, whom I had called earlier.
Mom, is it really you?
It seemed like David suddenly remembered too. Mike and Ashley's divorce happened when David was 2 years old, 3 years ago. Yet, David still remembered his biological mother. She was the mother he had yearned for when he first came to our house. And Ashley, too, had never forgotten David for even a moment. As the two of them calmed down from their crying, I explained everything to Ashley. How Christina had been harsh with David. The incident where he spilled the baby formula and was locked in the shed. And today, being excluded from Emma's birthday party because he was not family. I'm sorry, I should have watched over him more closely.
No, Emily, you don't have to apologize. You've been protecting David, haven't you? And you called me here.
I had hesitated to call her here because Mike had told me Ashley had an affair, which led to their divorce. But she seemed different from what I had imagined. You're David's biological mother. I called you on a whim, but I hope I didn't inconvenience you. Do you have a new partner or family? As I hesitantly asked. Ashley raised her voice.
No, I don't. All I wanted was David.
What did she mean? When I relayed what Mike had told me about their divorce, Ashley, turning pale, began to tell the truth.
Actually, Mike and that woman, Christina, were having an affair.
As she gazed sadly at the sleeping David, Ashley revealed the truth about Mike and Christina's relationship that began around the time David was born. Then, a man claiming to be a lawyer suddenly appeared before Ashley, presenting documents about her alleged affair and neglect of David, leading to the divorce, alimony, and child support discussions. Ashley had lost her parents early and was isolated. She had no one to turn to. After marrying Mike, she had become estranged from her friends. And as a stay-at-home mom devoted to baby David, had only superficial interactions with neighbors. In such weak social connections, gathering evidence to prove her innocence was difficult. I said, feeling dizzy with the revelation. I wish you had relied on me.
But at that time, I was so shocked by Mike's betrayal. I even doubted you.
Ashley admitted apologetically. I felt ashamed of my son's actions and regretted not connecting more closely with Ashley at that time. I hated myself for it. Really, I'm sorry. So, have you been paying child support?
Yes, my parents left me some money, and I was fortunate to reconnect with my previous employer. I've managed to pay child support without fail, for David's sake.
Hearing this, I couldn't listen anymore. I had been living obliviously with that couple. I don't even know how to apologize.
It's okay, Emily. You haven't done anything wrong. And finally, I got to see David. That alone makes all the child support worth it.
Ashley's expression was calm as she spoke. By the way, Mike has custody of David, but you haven't seen him, have you? I brought up the question that had been bothering me. As expected, Ashley's face darkened.
Since the divorce was finalized, I haven't seen him. Not even once.
She replied in a thin voice. I couldn't contain my emotions any longer. Ashley, I've made up my mind. David's parents aren't those two, it's you alone. I won't let them take David away from you anymore. I declared. Ashley looked at me in surprise. Then, she nodded firmly, seemingly agreeing with my determination.
I wasn't doing nothing, actually.
Ashley said, revealing that she had already hired a lawyer to counter the fraudulent alimony claims and to sue Mike and Christina for damages. The lawyer Ashley hired discovered that the attorney Mike and Christina had used was not a real lawyer, but just their friend. "I'll help you, for David's sake." Forming a team with Ashley in that late-night diner. 3 months passed, and I continued my usual life, making sure David came to no harm. One day, Ashley and her lawyer came to our house. Mike and Christina were surprised and flustered, but I calmed them and had them sit down.
What brings you here today?
Christina asked, trying to act tough.
We're here to discuss the compensation claims against you and Mike, and to talk about transferring David's custody to us.
Ashley calmly responded to the challenge.
Compensation. That should be about you, shouldn't it? Mike told me about you.
Christina mocks the former wife.
Well, that makes sense, considering you were Mike's mistress.
What an outrageous thing to say. I met Mike only after your divorce.
Silently observing the exchange between his ex-wife and current wife, Mike remained quiet. "Let's all calm down. First, let's hear from the lawyer," I interjected, pretending to be unaware of the truth, while subtly steering the conversation towards Ashley.
"Please take a look at this document,"
the lawyer said, unfolding a report prepared by the fake lawyer, hired by Christina and Mike.
"This is the report given by Mike's attorney at the time of his divorce from Ashley."
Such an old document. What proof could it possibly be?
Christina said, clearly flustered.
What about it? I too had a proper lawyer.
Mike began, but was interrupted by Ashley's lawyer.
"Was that really a lawyer? Which firm were they from?"
What?
Ignoring Mike's struggle to respond, the lawyer continued.
"As a fellow lawyer, I must say, this report lacks credibility. The evidence photos are clearly fabricated, and the claims of Ashley's neglect are too ambiguous."
But it was this evidence that led to their divorce.
Christina, desperate to defend her position, insisted.
"Indeed, Ashley did divorce based on these accusations, but the child support claims were excessively high. Besides, despite paying child support, she hasn't been allowed to see her child even once, right?"
Well, that's because David didn't want to see her.
How could that be? I thought to myself, recalling how much David had longed for his mother after the divorce. I shivered with anger.
But she did neglect him, didn't she? Regardless of how vague the testimonies were, they were still there.
Christina argued, regaining some of her composure.
"Would you like to see the child care diary I kept at that time?"
Ashley then pulled out a notebook. An ordinary, well-worn B5 size notebook. The cover read, David's Child Care Diary.
Such a thing could easily be filled in later.
However, when Ashley silently showed the contents of the diary, Christina's face drained of color. It was filled with detailed records of David's feeding, diaper changes, sleep times, and at the end of each day, a short diary entry by Ashley. In the empty spaces, there were also messages to David. Christina, who is raising her 1-year-old daughter, Emma, should surely understand. Could a person accused of neglect keep such a meticulously detailed child care diary? Christina was left speechless by what she saw. And Mike, watching her, looked utterly bewildered. Apparently, the concepts of genuine child care were beyond him.
In this diary, there's a section where Johnson's actions are also recorded.
Me?
Mike, already worn out, was taken aback.
It includes details like coming home late from work or going on business trips.
Ashley added with a tone suggesting she knew more.
But this doesn't expose any affair.
Christina insisted. True, a diary alone isn't enough for proof.
That's where we had to dig deeper.
Suddenly, Christina seemed to remember something and became visibly flustered.
I've kept Mike's credit card statements. They were tucked away in the household budget book after our divorce.
Neither Christina nor Mike seemed ready to argue.
On the day Mike claimed to be on a business trip, but didn't return, the credit card statement listed a charge from a resort hotel.
Ashley continued smoothly.
And on the same day, there's a photo posted on a woman's social media. The hashtags include the hotel's name and words like secret.
That's just a coincidence. That could happen to anyone.
Christina's desperate defense was palpable.
Well, this lady, despite talking about secrets, seems to be flaunting something in her photos.
Ashley pressed on.
Is this watch in the picture Mike's?
She asked. I noticed the shock in both Christina and Mike's expressions.
Isn't this a common design?
I see. Christina was unaware. This was a gift from my husband and me to Ashley and Mike when they got married. It's a pair of custom-made watches. I interjected, playing dumb.
No, it can't be.
The room fell silent for a moment.
Okay, enough.
Mike said resignedly. Ashley then gave a knowing glance to her lawyer.
Since the person involved has admitted it, this helps us a lot. We'll proceed with the settlement without going to mediation.
I won't accept this. I'll even take it to court.
Christina retorted defiantly, but the lawyer continued.
Shall we also discuss the fake report created by the so-called lawyer? We have already heard his side of the story, you know.
What?
Apparently, the fake lawyer was Christina's friend and ex-boyfriend. It seems he had been funneling Ashley's alimony and child support to himself.
Once we discussed the possibility of forgery of private documents, he was quite willing to share everything.
Christina had no comeback. Through the gap in the sliding doors, David peeked in, asking, Mom, what's wrong? It's nothing, Ashley replied, her face bright with relief.
Let's go home to your new house with Mom.
Later, instead of a settlement, a trial took place. This time, Christina and Mike hired a real lawyer. But the outcome was clear. Ashley won custody of David. Mike and Christina's past actions were recognized as criminal. They were ordered to return the excessive alimony and child support they had fraudulently claimed due to the forged documents, and pay alimony and child support to Ashley. This led to Mike and Christina blaming each other, eventually resulting in divorce. Christina was disowned by her family, and Emma was taken in by her grandparents. Christina apparently ended up in debt and working in the adult entertainment industry, a fate she brought upon herself. Of course, I cut ties with Mike. I had no intention of taking care of a criminal. Since then, I've let go of the house we used to live in, and now enjoy a peaceful life alone. While Mike continues to pay Ashley, I have no interest in what he's up to. As for Ashley, she and David often visit me. Our relationship has evolved into a friendship. Ashley, in fact, seems to have a budding romance with a lawyer from that time. She comes over for relationship advice, and it looks like David gets along well with him too. One day, while Ashley was discussing her love life with me, David suddenly said,
"Mom, I love seeing you smile. And I'm happiest when you and that guy are together."
A year has passed since then. Today is the day Ashley and David are visiting me. I couldn't wait, so I went down to the entrance of my apartment to meet them. I saw them walking towards me. David was considerately holding Ashley's hand. Such a kind child.
Did you come all the way down to meet us? Emily, thank you so much.
It's nothing. I was looking forward to it. Plus, I said, taking her bag and glancing at her noticeably pregnant belly, "You're not just one person anymore."
I can't wait to meet the baby. Dad is excited too.
Watching their happy faces, I couldn't help but smile. Outside, the warm air of spring enveloped us. My name is Michelle. Last Christmas, I accidentally stored about 7 pounds of high-end holiday food as fat on my body, so this year, I'm dieting for the upcoming holiday. If I can lose 7 pounds now, I'll be okay even if I gain 7 pounds over Christmas. Huh, that's not how it works, you say. Yeah, no way. There's just too much good food from Christmas to New Year's. And then I end up buying myself some Valentine's chocolates a bit later. Oops, I'm drooling. Looks like I'm gonna gain weight again this year. Well, today, I'd like to share a certain winter memory of mine. I'd love for you to hear it. It was when I was 25 years old. I had been dating my boyfriend, Keith, for a few years, and we decided to get married. I introduced Keith to my parents. It was what you'd call meeting the parents before marriage. My parents liked Keith, and everything was supposed to go smoothly, but then a problem arose. My older sister, Sally, who's 2 years older, came home from work and was instantly captivated by Keith. It's strange, but as sisters, I could tell what Sally was feeling and thinking in that moment. Sally had fallen in love with Keith at first sight. I hoped it was just my imagination, but when Keith offered a handshake, my sister blushed as she took his hand. When she talked to him, she always looked up at him with those doe eyes. I thought it was inappropriate for her to act like that with her sister's boyfriend, but she was probably doing it unconsciously. You can't control someone's feelings, and I thought, she won't take it seriously, she'll put a stop to it eventually, and chose to ignore it. However, after Keith left, my sister caught me in my embarrassing post-shower towel and said, "You should call off the wedding." When I asked why, she said things like, "That man is a player, you deserve someone better," and only negative things about Keith. But she had no evidence for any of it. When I asked why she thought he was a player, she said, "It's my woman's intuition." My sister had never had a boyfriend. How could I believe the intuition of someone with no experience with the opposite sex? Instead, I chose to trust what I had seen of Keith's character over the years. Naturally, I brushed off her advice with a non-committal "I'll be careful," not taking her seriously. After that, Keith started visiting my parents' house more often. He wanted to get closer to my family, so I invited him over more frequently. My parents were happy about it, and I was glad to see my future husband getting along with my parents. We were building a good relationship, but my sister was trying to build a good relationship with Keith in a different way. Keith told me that when I wasn't around, my sister would grab his arm, press her chest against him, and ask, "Don't you think Michelle is a bit childish?" She asked for his contact information, and even pretended to trip over nothing to expose her underwear in an accident. Keith laughed it off, saying it was so obvious it was funny. But if he had taken it seriously, I would have been worried sick. However, my sister seemed to think that Keith wasn't strongly rejecting her out of respect for me, so she took it as a sign he was interested, and kept making moves on him with a sugary sweet voice every time they met. Originally, it started with love at first sight, but the fact that Keith worked for a fairly large company also hit the mark for her. He was reliable, good-looking, and a secure future with him seemed guaranteed, so she wouldn't back down. Even though my parents saw her shameless behavior, they said nothing. Then again, it wasn't the first time my parents hadn't said anything to her. Honestly, my sister has always been the type you can't do anything. If I asked her to heat up some side dishes, for some reason she would put a non-microwave safe plastic plate in the microwave and melt it into a gooey mess. And, of course, she was terrible at studying too. She was bad at sports as well, especially swimming classes, which she would skip by making excuses like "I hurt my leg," "I'm not feeling well," or "I have a skin rash." She couldn't study, do sports, or handle household chores. To be honest, she wasn't particularly good looking either. But our parents doted on her just because she was the eldest daughter, and ordered me to support her from behind the scenes. From behind the scenes, they said, "Don't stand out, make your sister look good." It's terrible, considering we're sisters. Well, maybe to our parents, my sister seemed endearing because she was the poor thing who couldn't do anything. Strangely, I was oddly good at everything, kind of a jack of all trades. If I learned something, I would pick it up quickly. To adults, I must have seemed like a child with no charm who wasn't worth teaching. So even the mission to make my sister look good was something I accomplished easily, and there was a time when I pretended to be a kid who couldn't do anything outside the house. Around adolescence, I thought, if I keep doing this, I'll fail my exams, and started rebelling against my parents, doing whatever I wanted. If I had continued to listen to my parents, I might have truly become a kid who couldn't do anything. Well, because of this rebellion, my sister began to dislike me a bit, saying, "You stopped supporting me," but we were never on bad terms. We had normal conversations, and I even gave her advice sometimes. Though there was a slight bit of distortion, with my parents doting on my sister and her hostility towards me, I think we were still a normal family. However, this balance was disrupted because Keith never showed any interest in my sister.
How dare you, the younger sister, get married first? It's unacceptable.
The night before my wedding, my sister said to our parents,
"No, it's okay. Sally will get married soon too."
That's right, Sally.
That's not the point. Normally, the older sister gets married first, and then the younger sister follows, right? She's not ready yet.
Even so, the wedding is tomorrow, you know.
What, Mom, aren't you on my side? From now on, I'll be the pitiful older sister whose younger sister got married first.
That's not true.
I quietly listened in the hallway to the drama unfolding in the living room. Don't get married before your sister. If I waited for my loveless sister to get married, I'd be old and gray in no time. Honestly, what is my sister even talking about? Well, I thought she would calm down after venting, but...
Fine. Tomorrow, both Dad and I will skip the wedding, so please forgive us. Right, Sally?
What? I couldn't believe my ears. Mom, too, went along with Dad, saying, "Let's do that," and pleaded for my sister's forgiveness. What is this? Are they my sister's disciples or something? Their devotion was almost cult-like. At this point, it wasn't just doting anymore. But my sister sighed and said, "Well, I guess I have no choice. I'll tolerate it as long as it's an unapproved wedding by the family." She pouted. She really didn't want Keith and me to get married. Well, it's probably because she's in love with Keith, but it's unbelievable. Because of my sister's unrequited love, my parents were going to miss my wedding. And so, the day of the wedding arrived. Despite it being a sunny day, I hadn't slept much and was completely sleep-deprived. Of course, it wasn't because I was too excited about the wedding to sleep. I had spent the whole night feeling nauseous, thinking about a conversation between my sister and parents. I'll never forget the way my sister smirked when my parents officially informed me of their intention to be absent. At the venue, I told Keith and my in-laws about my parents' absence. "I'm sorry, my sister opposed this marriage, so my family won't be attending." There's no more miserable news to deliver. In-laws must find it hard to believe that parents would not attend their own daughter's wedding. Upon hearing my report, my in-laws fell silent for a while. On such a sunny day, the heavy atmosphere was unbearable. Just when I thought this is the worst, Emily took my hand. Oscar quickly placed his hand over Emily's.
"If it's about your family, they're right here. Did you forget? Please don't make today a sad day. Come on, smile.
Emily and Oscar smiled gently, and their warmth brought tears to my eyes. Hey, Michelle, you still have your husband, so don't say such sad things like the family is absent, Keith said, gently patting my head. As I started crying, my in-laws and Keith, despite their laughter, were flustered, saying, "Bride, don't cry, hey, your makeup." In the midst of this, Emily looked straight into my face and said,
Michelle, it might be hard with your parents, but this will surely be a good new beginning. From now on, build your own family.
Emily hugged me tightly, comforting me as I felt abandoned by my parents. Keith and Oscar joined in. It'll be okay, just as Emily said, this will be a good new beginning. I'll build my own happy family, I vowed, and that day I safely married Keith. 15 years later, we had one daughter and 2 sons. Our responsible and capable daughter naturally took care of our 2 mischievous sons who were always causing havoc around the house, which was a big help. Still, when she yelled, "Cut it out already," it was just like me. Oh boy, I'm in trouble. Keith's job was going well, we bought a house, and life was peaceful. Then, troublemakers showed up to spoil everything. It was none other than my father, mother, and sister. Since the wedding, I had been estranged from my family and hadn't told them our new address. But somehow, they found out and showed up at our house. Of course, the first words out of my mouth weren't a warm "it's been a while," but a cold "what are you doing here?" Sally has a favor to ask, my sister said. Even my parents pleaded and said, "We can only ask you." What's going on? What could they possibly ask of someone who left home 15 years ago? As I stood there, torn between wanting to hear and not wanting to hear, my mother broke the silence.
Give Keith to your sister.
What? Keith, who had come to the entrance to see what was going on, was just as dumbfounded as I was. Wait a minute, I don't get it. Why am I being told to give Keith to my sister? In a stern tone, I asked, and my parents looked embarrassed. Only my sister remained smug and arrogant.
Your sister is still single. She'll be 42 this year.
So what? My father's words only confused me more. Keith seemed just as puzzled.
Actually, your sister's company went bankrupt recently, and she's now unemployed.
Oh, that's too bad.
I think you can understand our concern about the future of your single, jobless sister. You must feel the same way since you're her sister.
I silently stared at my parents, thinking, no, not at all, but I kept quiet. I was more curious about what they were going to say next, and my father's words were frustratingly slow. I didn't interrupt because I wanted him to get to the point quickly.
Apparently, your sister has always loved Keith and is still single because of him. You've enjoyed married life with Keith, right? Please, give Keith to your sister for the rest of her life.
What? I looked at Keith, thinking, what the heck are these people? Keith seemed so shocked that it was like his soul had left his body. Ignoring us, My parents got on their knees and begged, while my sister remained smug. From her attitude, it was clear she was confident she would get Keith. Well, I guess she got used to getting everything she wanted from our parents, but this was too much. As I held my head in frustration, Keith pulled me closer. It seemed his soul had returned.
Hey, isn't this a chance?
Do you mean that?
Yeah, because this is exactly what Michelle joked about when she was drunk, and now it's actually happening.
Shall we do it? We quickly separated and turned back to face my sister and parents. Sally, do you really like Keith that much? Surprised, my sister replied, "What? Yes, I've always loved him. Really, I love him so much." Wow, that's quite a strong feeling. You've loved him for 15 years, even after he became someone else's husband.
Yes, it was always painful, just thinking about you and Keith being together. It hurt so much because I believed we were meant to be.
My sister's confident tone made me almost gasp, but Keith and I managed to keep a serious face. I give up. If you feel that strongly about him, I'll step aside. It was my parents' turn to look shocked. My mother immediately exclaimed, "Are you sure? But didn't you love Keith too?" "No, actually, Keith also."
I've always loved you, Sally.
Keith said right after I spoke, without missing a beat. My sister's face turned bright red instantly.
Really, I knew it. You never pulled away when I linked arms with you, and the way you looked at me was always full of love. It was a long wait, but finally, we'll be together.
I almost burst out laughing but held it in. Keith, even though you're pretending to be teary-eyed while looking down, I can see your shoulders shaking. Hang in there.
From now on, we'll live together, Keith.
Suddenly, my sister stopped calling him Keith with an affectionate suffix and started calling him just Keith, as if it was the most natural thing. Over these 15 years, she must have imagined a very intense romantic relationship with Keith in her mind. "I'm happy, Sally. Please support me from now on," Keith smiled.
Of course.
Then I'll quit my job.
What?
The blush on my sister's cheeks vanished instantly, and her eyes went wide.
I don't want to waste a single second away from you. I'll quit my job and stay by your side forever.
What?
I won't go outside. If possible, I'd like you to come with me even to the bathroom. When you're doing housework, I'll be right behind you, watching all the time.
My sister was frozen in shock at Keith's cheerful words, then suddenly started to panic. My parents were also flustered.
I'm not working either, and that's kind of a problem.
A problem? Why? As long as we're together, we have nothing to fear. Even without money, we'll be happy, right?
Well, but in modern America, we have insurance costs and stuff. It's not like the old days.
So you're saying you can't love me without money?
No, that's not what I mean.
My sister's eyes were clearly darting around. Then, Keith, when we get divorced, make sure to pay a hefty alimony, okay? I said immediately. Don't worry, your sister and parents will pay, Keith smiled. My parents turned pale and exchanged glances.
Sally, Taking your sister's husband isn't right.
That's right, Sally. No matter what, this is too much.
Where had their desperation gone? My parents showed an astonishingly swift change of heart.
Wait, weren't you the ones who said Sally will definitely get Keith?
Well, Sally, that was different.
Shut up, shut up, shut up. Whose side are you on?
My sister went half mad, thrashing around, while my mother tried to calm her down, getting her hair pulled in the process. My father desperately tried to intervene. Is this a scene from hell? We watched this spectacle for a while. It was Keith who changed the flow by saying, excuse me, before I could. My sister and parents all turned to look at Keith.
To be honest, Sally, you're not my type at all. I was just being polite because you're Michelle's sister. But women who flirt are a complete turn-off for me. That's it. That's exactly it. A complete turn-off. Thinking I like you just because I was polite. I can handle women who are that delusional.
Keith's blunt honesty left my sister and parents speechless.
What? Then what was that just now, Keith?
Could you not address someone else's husband so familiarly? There's no way Keith would ever like you. We're happy together and have kids. I said this while stepping in front of my sister, who was approaching my husband with a pale face. What the hell? You tricked me, my sister shouted. How could you not realize you were being tricked? Why would a man who hasn't contacted you in 15 years be in love with you? Are you living in a fantasy world? My words made my sister's face turn bright red and her eyes fill with tears. She was crying out of frustration. Even if you were a desirable woman, no one would want an unemployed, delusional woman living off your parents. Besides, you've been having mom do all the housework at home, so you probably still can't do any household chores, right? At your age, with that skill set, you'd get dumped even if you did get married. As I delivered these harsh truths, Keith was laughing behind me. It seemed I hit the nail on the head, and my sister couldn't stop crying, sobbing loudly. My parents tried to comfort her, but with faces that said, "She's right." So, that's how it is. I'm not giving Keith up.
That's right. So give it up, Sally.
At our words, my sister began to bawl like a child. It's embarrassing as an adult. She really hasn't grown at all. Let this be a lesson. Don't ever contact us again. We'll cut all ties with you from now on. Even if Sally is unemployed and in trouble in the future, we won't help. Keep that in mind, I said, closing the front door. When the kids asked what happened, I told them, it seems a bad demon came. My eldest son said, let's throw them away, and although I stopped him, we could still hear the sound of the demon. No, my sister crying outside. 5 years have passed since then. As expected, my sister is still single. She managed to get a job, but I heard she relentlessly pursued young men and married men at her workplace, and eventually got fired. In her desperation to get married, she kept showing up everywhere and causing trouble, and now she's even banned from matchmaking parties. I think she'll be single for life. No doubt about it. My parents, despite being retired, are working multiple part-time jobs to save money for my sister. They probably realized that they can't rely on her for their future care. Well, they did dote on her that much. I hope they work hard and fully realize that it's all because of her. As for me, thanks to my well-behaved children and my hard-working husband, I never have to worry about tuition or going out to work, and I spend my days relaxed as a homemaker. Although, sometimes I wonder if going to work might have offset the overeating during holidays. My teenage daughter, who is already quite slim, insists on dieting, and I'm desperately trying to stop her. I tell her, "You can talk about dieting when you're as wide as your mom." My two sons have taken up dancing as a hobby and recently performed on stage at a local event. They've won a few awards and are adamant about joining a famous dance group, Exile, in the future. So I say, Exile members, please keep the group going until my sons grow up. Thank you. My in-laws visit us regularly, and we often share meals together. Even though I call them my in-laws here, I honestly think of them as my real parents. They've suggested we go to a luxury inn together once the kids are on spring break. I hope they stay healthy and live long, sharing many more days with us. Although there were many issues before the wedding, ever since getting married, every day has been filled with happiness. I truly feel like I've finally found my real family,